Buckle up, Buttercup. The gloves are off today. This video, are you smarter than the IRS? Is prompted because of a short I did recently. I'm going to start off right off the bat. I'm not smarter than the IRS. I don't want to be. But most people, and I don't mean most people like 51%, I mean like 99% of people think they're smarter than the IRS. And not just the simple things of changing your number of deductions throughout the year so that you can get a big tax return. Because when you're really poor, those big tax returns can have a huge impact, meaning that you gave an interest-free loan to the IRS. No, I'm not talking about the simple stuff. I'm actually talking about, do you even know what the IRS is? What's its purpose? And most importantly, what does it want? I would estimate about 99% of people think they're smarter than the IRS. And that's because they don't know what it is. But let me explain how this short that I released recently prompted this video where the gloves are off. So if you're easily offended, exit stage left. I put out a short saying it basically sucks to be a landlord. Because when you're playing World of Warcraft, you might get a text from a tenant saying they left the garage door open so their pets could come in and out because it's cold, and your pipe froze. So you have to go on Thumbtack, contact 3 plumbers to figure out who can get there, what their rate's going to be. You have to interrupt 10 minutes of your gaming so you can send somebody out to repair this pipe that the tenant basically broke. But what really sucks at the end of that short is the people who choose to work more than 40 hours a week for more than 40 years to retire on less than 40% of what they make. That would suck, right? So I make this, the short, and here's how YouTube works. This is behind the scenes YouTube information. YouTube doesn't really know if a video is going to perform well, if people are going to like it, because the creator doesn't matter, the viewer matters. And so it shares the content with the people who routinely return to the channel to watch the content. So the people who like my content are trying to invest, reach financial freedom, want to understand how to improve their processes to invest better, see the video, watch the whole thing, they leave a nice comment. Thank you for sharing your information. I appreciate each and every comment that you've ever left. I answer every single one. Lesson learned, I answer every single one, because then what happens is YouTube says, these people liked that video. It has 160% view duration, meaning people watched more than the whole thing, or watched it more than once. So it shares it with a new group, but it doesn't know who to share it with. So the title of my short was, Does It Suck Being a Landlord? So it shared it with groups of people who've Googled the word landlord. They didn't think it through at YouTube in the brain factory. People have Googled landlords suck. Landlords are the enemy. Landlords should self-delete themselves. So much so that when this little short that I did got shared with this new group of the anti-landlord group, they watched it because they hate landlords, and then they left comments. And again, I appreciate each and every comment, and I respond to each one. And some of them I had to respond and then block it because my response was not professional. I'm not here to be a professional. I'm here to help people reach financial freedom. Some of the comments were just a word: parasite, leech, which I kind of understand those. There's a symbiotic relationship between landlord and tenant where I can get that the juvenile mentality of those words apply. Fair enough. My favorite one is the comment, and you see this a lot in the forums anytime landlord stuff comes up from the landlord hate group. Get a real job. Being a landlord isn't a real job. Those are my comments that I love because no screaming eagle dookie. It's not a job. It's not a real job. It's not why we invest. So the idea of people just hating landlords made me think not only are these the 99% of people who think they're smarter than the IRS, but these are the people who really believe that they're smarter than the IRS. And they think that because landlords charge rent and make money off of something that is a necessity, it's in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, shelter is right in there, that they're evil or whatever. So whatever their reason for not liking them, because I understand when you leave your mom's basement to go have your mom make you a sandwich, you want to bitch about the landlords that charge too much for you to be able to move in. Totally understand it. I see the hate. I get it. I told you the gloves are off. If you're easily offended, don't be here. So let's talk about the real jobs that it took for me to become a landlord. And for the people who watch my content and who aren't douchebags, who want to become landlords. I joined the Marine Corps, a couple of combat tours, serve the country, get out of the Marines, work in law enforcement. So I get you hate landlords, probably hate cops too, because people hold you accountable for anything. They must suck. Become a truck driver and eventually become a truck driving instructor. So I've worked for decades to save the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right? The original first duplex was an owner-occupied one, and it didn't take hundreds of thousands. It took 17 for me to get into it. But saving the hundreds of thousands of dollars for the decade of investing in real estate while maintaining the property, paying the property taxes, insuring the property, fixing things when tenants break them, like leaving the garage door open because it's cold outside, which I understand. That's the real job it took to invest in real estate. But here's why the person who thinks landlords suck thinks they're smarter than the IRS. What is the IRS? It's in the business of money, right? Internal Revenue Service. Revenue, what's that? Sounds like money. So when you think of what the IRS is, I think one of the things that a lot of people misunderstand is, you know what the IRS does? It collects taxes, holds people accountable for the income that they make. But it is a motivational business. What does the IRS want? The IRS wants you, everyone in the United States and foreign investors, to understand the cash flow quadrant. I will give credit for this to Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the Rich Dad Poor Dad book in 1997. And his second follow-up book was the cash flow quadrant. So credit where credit is due. It's his concept. But this is what the IRS wants you to understand. So a lot of people think the IRS wants me to work, and the IRS wants me to make overtime because then I can pay more. And the IRS wants me to earn more so that I can pay more in taxes. And that's not what the IRS wants. The IRS doesn't. So I'm going to go through these one at a time. Employee, that's what the E stands for. Does the IRS want employees? No. File this away in your little caveman brain. The government doesn't want employees. The government doesn't make money off the taxes you pay as an employee. Proof of this is to lower inflation, the Fed is actively trying to raise the unemployment rate. They're trying to cause unemployment to go up to lower inflation. Overemployment, over wage inflation is bad for the economy. But people think I will be rewarded if I work for 40 to 50 years so that I can retire on a pension or so security, because the government needs employees who pay taxes. And that is, professional term, bull dookie. They're actively trying to cost you your job. So they tax you somewhere between 10 to 30%, depending on the tax bracket you fall into, to 30% of your wages goes to taxes as an employee, because the government, the IRS, is saying, we don't want employees, so since you're an employee, pay us money. Follow the logic there. Listen to this sentence and understand that this is not a joke. Working for money is the dumbest way to make it. I did it. Most of us do it. Working for money is how we get the money to invest. But if you continue to only work for money, you will work until you die. So then you think, okay, so let's move down to the self-employed, the S quadrant. Government must love them, right? Well, they didn't until 1986 when they changed the regulations and caused a crash, because you had a lot of doctors and attorneys who were self-employed, and the IRS said, hey, we don't want that. It's not giving us what we want. I'm about to cover in a minute what the IRS actually wants. So we're going to penalize, we're going to punish those self-employed people, and we're going to say, you get to pay the employee tax since you are self-employed, but you're also an employer. So now you get to pay the employer tax and the employee tax. So they're taxed. Employees can be taxed up to 30 to 40%, and self-employed can be taxed up to 60% of their income. So look at why all of the financial crisis that happened at the end of the 80s was because of this massive tax change. Because the IRS doesn't want self-employed and they don't want employees. Why do you think so many entrepreneurs fail? There's not a large support group of people going, we need entrepreneurs. We want to help you do that. Go out and start a plumbing business. What education do you need to become licensed? What insurance do you need to become licensed? What contracting tests do you need to take to pay a fee? If you're going to have employees, what do you need to set up to be a self-employed small business to do this? It's a huge mountain to get past because they don't want that. They don't want employees. They don't want self-employed. So you would think, okay, let's move over to the side that the government and the IRS actually want you to be in. Do they want you to have a business? Now, this is a large business. Robert Kiyosaki said 500 employees or more, but I think it's, $10 million in revenue or more, which is what our CDL school did when I was the president at 60 staff or less. So it doesn't take 500 to be considered a business owner. So the answer is, does the IRS want business owners? Ready? Sorta. Businesses employ people, and the IRS doesn't want employees. The government is trying to raise the unemployment rate, so they don't want businesses to prosper. So you have in the pendulum of the IRS mindset, we had the PPP loans, the EIDL loans that came out in 2020, 2021 to keep businesses going so the economy doesn't screech to a halt. But what do they do now? They raise interest rates because businesses mostly have adjustable rate debt to punish businesses to slow them down. And they tax them. Corporate gains tax is around 20%. And there's a lot of talk from one political party trying to raise that to 37% because the government doesn't want employees, doesn't want self-employed, and doesn't want businesses, sorta on the businesses. So you get some tax benefits because the government does want innovation and businesses can grow and innovate in different industries if you get tax write-offs. That's why most people don't understand this, and I don't understand it clearly because I don't want to. I hire a CPA for this stuff. But if you buy something that you're going to use in your business, it lowers the amount of income that you're going to be taxed on. But if you spend money in R&D, research and development, that is a one-for-one tax write-off, right? It's a very different type of write-off to research and develop something as it is to have an expense to run your business. I don't want to understand how that works. That's why we hire a pro. I don't want to understand how to put a roof on, but you can probably hear people working here. That's why we hire pros. Here's what they want. What the IRS wants, what the IRS rewards, the incentive program that we have. The government wants innovation. We need advancement. We need new technologies. We need to stay at the pinnacle of whatever world power you want to call it. And we have a massive housing shortage. With a massive housing shortage, what do we want? The government wants more housing. More housing doesn't happen when you have an overregulated government system that won't let you put a house in place. Imagine what it takes to put a house in place, where the fees to connect to septic, it's a sewer, start around 20 to 30,000. Impact fee, the waste fee, the permits, that doesn't even include somebody's got to do the work, right? Then you want the permit to, before you've moved a shovel load of dirt on your property, you're going to spend between $30,000 and $80,000. The limited amount of building capabilities that we have means we have a limited supply of houses. So the IRS says we need, no kidding, and suck it, people who hate landlords, we need landlords because not everybody wants to own. Not everybody has the financial responsibility to be able to fix a roof, insulate, do drywall repair, replace a water heater, rehab a unit. You can go to Gary, Indiana, where Millennial Mike invests, and there are tens of thousands of vacant houses. You think housing is unaffordable? Go there. Contractors can buy a house and the city gives you another one for free. Buy one, get one free, like a Subway foot-long sandwich. You can go there and get houses. Housing is super cheap once it's made, but who can maintain it? Who can rehab it? It takes money. So instead of that, people like Millennial Mike buy a property, invest tens of thousands of dollars fixing it up, provide another rental unit for the Section 8 program that needs it. So now you have the government who needs housing. They have the money. They'll pay for the housing. They can't pay you to own the house, to maintain the house, to pay the property taxes on the house. That doesn't really work full circle, does it? So they want landlords. So they say, hey, use me, Dion. Why don't you invest a couple $100,000, 320 over a decade, to create No kidding. In 2022, $204,000 in profit after all expenses, after paying mortgages, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, and paying taxes. You pay no income tax on that. So 40% for employee, because we don't want those as a government. 60% for self-employed, because we even don't want those more as a government. Businesses will give you some breaks, but we're still going to tax you because we want you to cause some unemployment to lower inflation. But investors, landlords, if you stop fighting the IRS and stop thinking you're smarter than the IRS and stop doing this is the dumbest. I saved this for the end because this pisses off a lot of people. Remember, you can't drink all day unless you start early. Stop fighting the IRS. Stop thinking, I'm going to work at a job to pay money to the IRS because that's what they want. They don't. The government is actively trying to increase unemployment. Stop thinking, doing the dumbest thing on the planet if you want to retire early and putting money into a retirement account because you are hoping, don't get caught living on hopium, that taxes are lower in the future. Have you met the government? You are hoping that you retire in a lower tax bracket. You mean you're planning on failing. If you want to retire early, before 59 and a half, and you put your money to work in a rental, the IRS rewards you, thanks you, because not only did I make the $204,000 in profit that year, so I retired, I carried forward a loss on paper. So when I'm filing my taxes for 2023, I'm going to pay less taxes because of what happened in 2022, and on and on and on. Things like depreciation. Do you get to depreciate your wage when you get your cost of living wage increase? Do you get to go to the IRS and say, hey, I make more money, but things cost more, so I want to pay less taxes? That's not how it works. Your property, your rental that you own, goes up in value because of inflation. I don't know if it's cause and effect, horse and cart, whichever came first, chicken and egg, but your property value goes up. And you get to tell the government my buildings are a year older, so I'm going to take a 27.5-year time span and take off 1 year of that off of the amount of income that I make every year. Even though the value went up, you depreciate against the taxes. So to the people who like the content, who have a brain, who aren't fighting the IRS, you've got this. And for the doofuses who hate landlords because you're living in your mom's basement and you have nothing better to do than troll the internet, and I honestly wish I could share some of the responses I sent before I blocked the people from my channel. Because while I'm not here to be professional, generally I perceive myself as a very professional person, but those responses were not responsive, professional. Words are hard. This was a nice short live stream on a Saturday where luckily I looked and I saw One Rental at a Time was doing a Saturday live and didn't go live when he was live. But if you want your questions answered live every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific, I do a live stream that lasts basically as long as the questions do. You can hate landlords all you want, but more properties, more houses is the solution. There are things causing rents to go up, and it isn't landlords. Did you know that landlords can't set the rent? We just can't. If we pick a rent we want, you don't have to rent it. Here's what sets the rents. January 2024, go to the fair housing, Google, HUD. What are the fair market rents? I saw from $2,200 to $3,000 was the increase in one of the counties for the rental units. Basic allowance for housing that the military pays around military installations and around colleges because people use their GI Bill to go to college can set rents. What will the government pay for around military? What will the government pay for Section 8? When we see new builds, the cost of new build being so high, the permits, the connection, the impact fees, costing some of the gopher studies that cost almost 10 grand to make sure you're not displacing an animal, to be able to build the houses that we need, costing so much. And then you add this adjustable rate that they're trying to make the businesses suffer so we can raise that unemployment rate to curb inflation. The new builds have to rent a certain amount or they lose they actually lose money and not instead of having a profit. So people aren't incentivized to even build more. That's why right now we've built less houses in the last decade than in any of the previous decades. Now I'll show you this, and this is what I'll wrap up the video with. This is why, this is what overregulating does on builds. 26 million, 27 million homes built per decade for 20 years, and then we dropped a little bit below 6. That's why rents are so high. We don't have enough houses. And in order to have enough houses, suck it, we need more landlords. This is going to go to his head. Hopefully he doesn't make it this far in my video. The world needs more millennial Mikes. People who will buy in Gary, Indiana, literally voted one of the worst places in the US to live. People need people like Mike who will invest money to fix the properties up, to make them to the point where they pass a Section 8 inspection so that a family can have a place to live, a family that doesn't have the means to not only acquire the property, but to maintain and keep the property. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.